how many TV stations across Canada are making plans to send a camera to Zurich to cover Mitch Marner?
Well, I hope not too many. It's still a little ways off, I think, to be fair. I mean, this is unusual, I think, in large part because the team themselves confirmed what's going on. But, Mitch Marner, I would assume, is only getting on a plane to go there if there's no hope for a contract, pretty close to September 12th when the Leafs are due to open training camp. And, it would stand to reason that you make these kind of phone calls and line things up to have it all set up early, just in case it's needed. But there's still a lot of things that can happen that will keep him from ever going to Zurich, practicing with the Zurich Lions, or what have you. But we'll see. This is kind of part of the playbook. A lot of other restricted free agents have either threatened this or actually gone over. And obviously, it's something Mitch intends to do if a contract doesn't come around with the Leafs.
Does it still feel like Mitch Marner is going to set the market?
Ooh, good question. I still think so. Yeah. I mean, I'm getting, the longer this goes on, it's almost more confusing. I mean, I could understand it for a certain period of time. But what's unique about Mitch's situation is, first of all, he and the Leafs have been talking for a long, long time, or at least his camp and Leafs management. We have a guy from Toronto, obviously, his agent's based here in the city. I think that I probably didn't imagine it would reach this point where it's still sort of hanging out there in the air, because, I think that the Leafs recognize the talent that he is. And part of me wonders, how much more is there to be gained by waiting? I mean, the leverage, unfortunately, this is true not just of Mitch Marner's situation, but all the other restricted free agents, largely lies with the teams here, because all the players can do is withhold their services. And I'm not sure that's the best thing for any of them to do. And I think it's even more complicated if you're someone like Mitch Marner, who's seen a teammate go through it last year, and William Nylander, who knows what the season means, who I presume wants to stay a member of the Leafs. I've never heard any claim otherwise, but the longer it goes on, I think the possibility of him being traded goes up as well, because I don't think the Leafs want anything to do with the sideshow that they went through last year, coming to training camp again on September 12th.
CJ, we did wake up to some RFA news, however. Colin White, 6-year deal, $28.5 million with the Ottawa Senators. What do you make of that move?
Well, the news for me is that the Ottawa Senators have signed a 6-year deal with anybody. It's been 5 years since they signed that length of contract. It was actually the late Brian Murray who signed Bobby Ryan to his long-term extension he's still playing on. But, it's a bit of change in direction. It's one of these contracts, I've seen lots of other teams do them, that has a bit of risk built in because you've only seen one full season in the NHL for Colin White. But, I think it's the kind of bet that's worth making, especially if you believe in the player, that he's going to continue to get better, be a bona fide top 6 option. And by the end of that 6-year deal, his value will look like a steal for the Senators. I think certainly that's a big possibility. But it's also a bit of a shift in business from what we've seen from Pierre Dorion in the past. And I'm sure Senators fans and people that follow the team hope it's continued when it comes time to give Thomas Chabot his next deal, because he's probably the more proven quantity among the Sens young players, even more so than Colin White at this stage.
Speaking of carrying weight, Billy Guerin's name still carries some weight in this country. What did you make of the hire in Minnesota?
Well, what a tough situation to step into for your first GM job. I mean, I guess on some level is always the case. You're not usually getting hired where everything's rosy when you're getting that kind of position. But, because Paul Fenton only lasted 14 months as a general manager of the Minnesota Wild, he left behind a half-complete hockey operations department. He'd made some changes, but there is some holdover from Chuck Fletcher's time. And I think Bill Guerin actually is ideally suited to be someone who can go in and try to mend the group together and bring people together. He's, very devoted, very good communicator, long-time respected person in the game. And, he's really cut his teeth in Pittsburgh. I think that part might be a little bit overlooked, is that he's worked for the Penguins in a number of roles, starting with player development, going back even before Jim Rutherford's time as a GM there. And so he's seen a lot after his playing career. So, I think it's an interesting hire. I always have had Bill as on the short list of guys I figured would be a GM somewhere someday. And he managed to convince Craig Leopold and the Wild staff to give him that job, even though it didn't go so well with the first-time GM right before him. And so that's an accomplishment in itself.
There are some ties to Edmonton with Guerin and also some ties to Edmonton with Derick Brassard, and some people thought maybe there was a chance that he ended up there. He goes to the island. Did that surprise you?
Not entirely. You know, certainly Edmonton was a team that expressed some interest in Derick Brassard throughout the summer. I think that, you know, he was someone that was looking to that he could be a value add for them. I mean, it's so tough when you're a unrestricted free agent and you get this late in the summer. I mean, generally you're looking at a limited number of teams, and obviously cap is an issue, and the Oilers only had so much to spend. But, you know, I think for Derick Brassard, ultimately, you know, he spent a number of years with the Rangers, is comfortable in New York. He's played and had some of his best hockey in the Eastern Conference, and he ended up deciding that the island was where he wanted to go. But George Laraque maybe got a little ahead of himself, reporting that it was the Oilers, but he wasn't totally off base. I mean, certainly there was conversations there, and you know, Derick Brassard ultimately made his decision to go to the other blue and orange team.